Seth Rollins needs therapy. I'm dead serious. This man stood backstage, looked directly into Cody Rhodes' eyes, and basically confessed he's been living rent-free in Cody's shadow for months. And you know what the worst part is? WWE is letting this happen. They're enabling this toxic obsession, and nobody's talking about how uncomfortable this has become. Seth Rollins, a former world champion, a Grand Slam champion, has reduced himself to being Cody Rhodes' biggest fan, and it's honestly pathetic to watch. Let me break down what happened in this backstage segment, because if you missed it, you missed one of the most emotionally manipulative pieces of television WWE has produced this year. Seth Rollins cornered Cody Rhodes backstage. Not for a fight, not for a championship opportunity, but to have what can only be described as a therapy session where he needed validation from the man who's basically replaced him as the face of Monday Night Raw. The segment started with Seth pacing back and forth, and you could see it in his eyes. That desperation, that need for acknowledgement. And when Cody walked into frame, Seth didn't attack him. He didn't challenge him. He stood there like a scorned ex-lover demanding closure. "I can't stop thinking about you," Seth might as well have said, because that's exactly what the subtext was screaming. Here's what makes this so infuriating: Seth Rollins was the guy. He was the architect. He rebuilt his knee and came back stronger. He carried Raw through the pandemic era. He gave us some of the most memorable matches of the last decade. And now he's reduced to orbiting around Cody Rhodes like a moon that lost its planet. WWE has systematically dismantled everything that made Seth Rollins special just to prop up their golden boy from AEW. And before the Cody fanboys come at me in the comments, let me be crystal clear: this isn't about Cody. This is about WWE's booking philosophy that says you can only elevate one person by making everyone else look obsessed, desperate, or weak. Seth Rollins doesn't need to be obsessed with Cody Rhodes to be relevant, but WWE has decided that's his character now. The guy who can't move on. The guy who defines himself by his connection to Cody. In that backstage segment, Seth talked about how he sees himself in Cody. How Cody represents everything Seth used to be. How watching Cody succeed feels like watching a ghost of his former self. And you know what? That's the most honest thing WWE has put on television in months, but it's also the most damaging thing they could do to Seth Rollins' character. Because what they're essentially saying is Seth Rollins' best days are behind him, and he knows it. The emotional weight Seth brought to that segment was undeniable. His voice cracked. His eyes watered. This man is one of the best performers in the business, and he sold that obsession. He made you believe that Cody Rhodes is the only thing that matters in his world anymore. And that's the problem. A performer of Seth's caliber shouldn't be relegated to being a supporting character in someone else's story. Think about this logically. Seth Rollins has beaten Roman Reigns. He's defeated Brock Lesnar. He's main event WrestleMania multiple times. He's held every major championship WWE has to offer. And now his most compelling storyline is that he can't stop thinking about Cody Rhodes? Make it make sense. This is a man who should be in the main event picture, fighting for championships, creating legacy moments. Instead, he's backstage having emotional breakdowns about another man's success. The segment went deeper when Seth admitted that every time Cody wins, it hurts. Every time Cody gets cheered, Seth feels it like a knife in his back. Not because he hates Cody, but because he loves what Cody represents. He loves the idea of being the hero, the underdog, the man who finishes his story. But Seth already had his story. He was the betrayer who became the hero. He was S.H.I.E.L.D's architect who became the Messiah. He's had more character development than almost anyone on the roster. But here's where WWE is playing with fire: they're creating a dynamic that makes Seth look weak mentally. In professional wrestling, perception is everything. And right now, the perception is that Seth Rollins is so emotionally unstable that he needs to confront Cody Rhodes just to process his own feelings. That's not a rivalry. That's a wellness check waiting to happen. Cody's response in that segment was almost worse. He looked at Seth with pity. Pity. Like Seth was some kind of tragic figure who needed compassion rather than competition. Cody put his hand on Seth's shoulder and basically said, "I understand, but you need to move on." As if Seth is the problem here. As if Seth is the one who can't handle the business when WWE is the one who booked him into this corner. What makes this obsession storyline so maddening is that it could have been something different. WWE could have positioned Seth as the veteran who sees potential in Cody but also sees him as a threat. They could have built a respectful rivalry based on mutual recognition of talent. Instead, they went with the obsessed former star angle, which is the laziest, most overdone trope in wrestling history. And let's talk about the elephant in the room. This reeks of Triple H's booking philosophy where emotional vulnerability equals character depth. Yes, showing emotion is important. Yes, wrestlers should be more than one-dimensional characters. But there's a difference between showing vulnerability and making your former world champions look like they're one bad day away from a breakdown. Seth Rollins stood there and essentially told Cody, "You're living the life I want." That's devastating. That's a man admitting defeat while he's still active on the roster. WWE just had one of their top stars wave the white flag in the middle of a random backstage segment, and they expect us to think this is compelling television? This is character assassination disguised as storytelling. The worst part? The fans are eating it up. They're calling it deep and emotional and the best character work of the year. But nobody's asking why Seth Rollins needs to be characterized as obsessed in the first place. Nobody's questioning why WWE keeps putting their established stars in positions where they look inferior to the new golden child. This is the same company that had Bray Wyatt lose to everyone, that had Kevin Owens spinning his wheels for years, that had Sami Zayn as a comedy act until they had no choice but to push him. Seth's obsession with Cody is a reflection of WWE's obsession with creating one megastar at the expense of everyone else. They did it with Roman Reigns, and now they're doing it with Cody Rhodes. And the casualties are guys like Seth Rollins who have to embarrass themselves on television just to stay relevant in the company they helped build. Here's what should have happened: Seth should have confronted Cody as an equal. He should have said, "You're good, but I'm better, and I'm going to prove it." Instead, he said, "You're everything I wish I could be." One of those statements builds a rivalry. The other builds a therapy bill. The segment ended with Seth walking away, head down, shoulders slumped, looking like a man defeated by his own thoughts. And Cody stood there, looking sympathetic, like he just witnessed something tragic. This is what WWE thinks we want. They think we want to see Seth Rollins broken down and obsessed. They think that's entertainment. But here's the reality: Seth Rollins is too talented for this. He's too good to be playing the role of the guy who can't move on. He should be in blood feuds, championship matches, career-defining moments. Not backstage asking Cody Rhodes for emotional validation. This obsession angle is dangerous because it sets a precedent. It tells every wrestler on that roster that if you're not the guy, then your best storyline option is to become obsessed with the guy. That's not how you build a diverse, interesting roster. That's how you create a hierarchy where everyone exists to serve one person's narrative. And mark my words, this is going to lead to a match where Seth puts everything on the line, gives Cody the match of his life, and loses. Because that's what obsessed characters do. They lose. They serve the story of the person they're obsessed with. Seth Rollins is being positioned as the guy who makes Cody look good, not as the guy who can stand toe-to-toe with him. The saddest part of that entire segment was seeing the fire in Seth's eyes replaced with desperation. This is a man who once burned down his brother's legacy to get ahead. Now he's burning himself down just to stay in the conversation. WWE has taken one of the most dynamic performers of this generation and turned him into a cautionary tale about what happens when you're not management's chosen one. So yeah, Seth Rollins confronted his obsession with Cody Rhodes. And it was emotional. And it was intense. But it was also a masterclass in how to diminish a star while pretending to give them depth. This isn't character development. This is character demolition. And if you can't see that, then you're exactly who WWE is targeting with this manipulative storytelling.